Welcome. My name is Mark Conley. I'm the chair of the music department here at URI, and welcome to what I call Meet the Person, or Meet the People in this case, rather than Meet the Artist, which can seem a little highfalutin. It all works out the same. So it's my pleasure this afternoon to welcome Chen and Joel Link, and they are our artists for today. So please give them a warm welcome. And I'm going to start with Joel. And I was wondering if you could talk to us a little bit about the role of the first violinist in a string quartet. Is it different from everyone else's? And if so, how? Or do you consider yourself having the same role as everyone else?
Oh, that's a really good question. I feel like playing first violin in a quartet is most like playing solo in any capacity. You do spend more time than anybody else in most pieces playing the melodic line, and that up to a certain point, if you have really great colleagues, they help and support you in a way to allow you to play the way that you would like to play. I think the flip side of that is you can get kind of lost in that, and if you're doing that without really being attuned to what's happening underneath, then it's kind of pointless, and then you're just kind of dragging a lot of people along. So there is, of course, a lot of that playing with people aspect, but you certainly do get more of that, I think, more of that experience. So I would say every role in the quartet is different. I'd say if any two are more similar, it's maybe the second violin and the viola. But even those really, really differ because, of course, the second violin is kind of coming a little more with the first violin, and the viola is kind of connecting a little more with the cello and just kind of those timbres. So yeah, similar, but also different, I would say.
Great. And I don't know if you, if your ears were burning on Wednesday, but you were brought up in the sense that I was talking to Camden a little bit about how the role of negotiation goes on within a string quartet, because it's very easy for people to think that the music goes in front of the players and they all just begin playing all at once, and it's all sunshine, rainbows, and unicorns, and they've all figured out everything, and it's just wonderful. But the fact is, it's four different people with four different opinions, and there can be occasional, shall we say, disagreements. You would hope there would be, as we were saying, because otherwise it means that nobody really cares about what's going on. If you have a passionate opinion about it, you're going to have some disagreements from time to time. What Camden was saying was that you have a very, generally, you have a very open approach to everything musically, and that you're willing to try a lot of things. And I'm wondering if you have a guiding philosophy for your work in the quartet in terms of the way you approach the music and the way you approach negotiating with your colleagues when there's a disagreement.
Yeah, I'm glad I paid Camden that 20 before the last talk. That's really nice. I would say that for me, I like to look at playing in a quartet as there's so many opportunities that can be really difficult in playing in a string quartet, and I like to look at those as opportunities for growth. So I think for me, that's my personal take on that stuff, which is why I try to have an open approach. And I, after having done this for about 15 years, I certainly have been introspective enough to realize that there are many times that I felt very convinced by what I was about, musically by what I wanted to say, and fought for it against the other three very, very hard. And then honestly, I woke up the next day and I didn't really like what I had really fought for. So I know that those things can really change. And just because you're feeling it really strongly in the moment, a lot of times we'll try things a couple different ways, and I'll be like, I'd like to kind of sleep on all these things before I start really, I don't know, driving into a particular idea. So I'd say that approach of being open hopefully has been something that I've developed over a long time. I'd like to say it was there from the beginning, but I don't necessarily think it was. So I think experience in working with other people, I've often said that I feel like working in a string quartet is more than even a study of music, it's a study in human psychology. And it's just really interesting to see how people function, not only within arguing about a musical idea, which is obviously mostly what we're talking about, but just kind of across the whole scope of how diverse people can be, and even how choosing the right rental car is a different experience for everyone.
Well, I was going to say, you spend a lot of time together, and so do you negotiate time apart? Do you hang out together all the time when you're touring? How does that tend to work?
It changes. I think depending on what people are trying to do individually. Sometimes someone's working on a project or really on fire about something. It could even be a show on Netflix. It could be something that they're building on the West Coast. It could be anything, and that will take their time. They're like, oh, I'm going to pass on dinner. This kind of thing. I think we do enjoy hanging out together, which is more than can be said for many other string quartets, and Chae Hung can say that. I maybe not ask him too much about it, but he did tour with us for about 2 weeks and 2.5 weeks in Europe, and it was a pretty brutal tour, so he's seen it pretty up close, and I would say that we don't hold a lot back. It wasn't like, oh, there's a different person on tour, we have to be really nice in front of him, and like, you know, make it seem like we're nice. So I think we all get along, and we realize that when people need to take time away or need a little bit of space, I think you do learn over time that you can tell when it's personal and when it's not. And I think if you really try to just kind of be like, oh, Camden needs a little more space today, that's totally fine.
So my next question was going to be directed to you, Chae Hung, because you're working with the quartet this afternoon, and it actually segues nicely into what you were just talking about. So you're joining the quartet for a piece. What's it like to enter into music making with an established group where you're the fifth person in a 5-person ensemble, and they're well established, and now I know you know them a little bit already, but in any case, when you're entering into an established ensemble, what's different about that, and how do you negotiate through that?
In this particular case, when I'm joining a Dover quartet, it's kind of like you're given a Bentley or a Lamborghini, and then you just kind of don't want to screw it up. You just go with the flow, and I'm hoping that I can do that today. But they are, they're just such amazing, wonderful musicians, and so honestly, it's very easy. Like if you just, if I just stay in my lane and do my job, and just go with them, they have everything already there, and it's just such a joy to do so. When you have when you have 5 different people came from different backgrounds and just get it together, usually that takes more time for things to gel and to work out. So yeah, it's definitely a plus.
So I like to back up a little bit, because I noticed that in the Q&As this year in particular, it's very gratifying. We have a wider age range among our audience than is sometimes the case, which is great. So I wanted to back way up for a moment, and I'll start with Chae Hung. What drew you to the viola? What made you interested in that? When did that start?
So when I get asked this question, I always said I didn't choose the viola, the viola chose me. Partly because when I was 5 years old, I would go to my older brother. I would go to his violin lessons, but his teacher back then was a violist. So I would be just screwing around on the side during his lesson, but then at some point the teacher told my mother that, oh, the little one has to play too. And then my mother said, well, we don't have the resources to give 2 child to play instrument, and then he ended up teaching both of us for the price of 1. And eventually we both switched to viola because he was a violist himself. So that counts as it chose me, right? I think so.
But, well, it does. It's interesting because similar experience with my son, who always went to his sister's, he's a twin, went to his sister's ballet lessons. And for those of you who know Festival Ballet Providence, it was Misha Jurek was the head of the thing, and he would always say, "What for you sit over in the corner? You come in here, you dance, you join." And and so he eventually joined. But of course, it's one thing to start; it's another thing to continue. So what continued to keep you going with the viola?
My brother went to Curtis when he was 13 by himself, and I was like, and then he left Taiwan, and I was like, I want to go, So that was what drove me to work hard and got into Curtis. Your brother went to Curtis too, right? So.
Yeah. So what was your experience? You're starting. What drew you to the violin? What kept you going?
Yeah, mine's similar and a little different. I'm the youngest of 3. My sister started. I grew up in rural Georgia, actually the state, not the country, and that has been mistaken many times before. been asked if I speak all sorts of things. So went to her recital. I think it was a Twinkle recital when I was like 3.5, and the story goes that I got up at the end and I started screaming, saying it was my turn to play. But I did not know how to play, and I was 3. So they started me on lessons when I was really young, and I, kind of went through school. And when it was time to kind of choose, I was really into soccer and really into music. We were in the car coming back from a soccer practice. My mom said, well, you're like 13 and you should start thinking about what you really want to do. And she was like, you're good at, this and these 2 things primarily. I'm okay at academic stuff too. And she was like, oh, but choose music because you can do that for your whole life. You can do that until you're really old. So I was like, oh, sweet, that sounds good. I'm totally going to do music. Like, that was the kind of kid I was. So I chose to do music, and I really wanted to go to the Curtis Institute and was really inspired by other students that I'd met when I was younger at camps and things like that. So I applied, and I was really fortunate and got in. And at that point, actually, my brother had gone full shift from being a musician to being like an academic guy. So he went to get a math degree at school, and then he was kind of rebellious. He's like, I don't want to do music. We've always done music. I want to do something else. So then he got this math degree, and then he came back and he said, I really love music. So he came back to music and went to Juilliard, and he went to Curtis later. So kind of reverse, but very, very similar. And I think it's just the love of being able to communicate with people. You can travel to Georgia, the country, and play for people. I could even travel there, and you get to communicate with people in a really special way that doesn't even require speaking. And I think there's always been something really meaningful for me in that.
What's something that's on your playlist right now that is not purely professional, but that you're deriving enjoyment from, that you're listening to right now? And I'll start with you, Joel.
Well, on the classical side, I've been listening to the Dvorak Bass Quintet a lot these days, because we played it a little bit last year, and I kind of fell in love with that piece as well. So that's on my classical. On my non-classical, I would say I do a lot of... I listen to a lot of Ella Fitzgerald and Billie Holiday, so I'm like kind of a old school crooning jazz nut in a way. I would say that's probably mostly what I listen to. Occasionally some bossa nova and things like that. I'm cheesy, it's fine, I know it, I've embraced it.
That's not cheesy. And the thing about Ella Fitzgerald and Billie Holiday, they never did the same phrase the same way twice. And so there's so much you can learn from them in terms of phrasing and musicianship. How about for you?
This is going to disappoint because I don't really have a playlist, but Natalie and I tend to listen to pieces that we either about to play or about to listen to, and then we'll kind of get ourselves to be familiar with it, mostly classical.
Mm-hmm. How many versions of something might you listen to that you're preparing for, approximately?
We all have our favorites. And I think at least we'll try a couple or 3, and then we kind of know which one that we wanted to stick with. Usually the process doesn't take too long. So.
Right, especially after you've had some experience, right? You can whittle it down pretty quickly. I hope everyone will join me in thanking Chen and Joel Link for coming and sharing some time with us.
Thanks, Mark.
Thank you.